Well, John, the book, Motoring Africa, Sustainable Automotive Industrialization, it's really a roadmap, an actionable roadmap for automakers to be able to participate in the next emerging growth market opportunity, which is the African continent. According to data by the United Nations and McKinsey, the population of the African continent is going to double over the next 30 years.
And it's what, about 1 billion right now?
1.2 billion people today, going to 2.5 billion people by the year.
Bigger than China or India?
Yeah, and the workforce, as important, the workforce will be bigger than China or India. And that's going to happen between now and 2034. So the workforce will become the largest workforce in the world, and then following that, the largest population in the world, the largest country and the largest economy on the continent, of the 54 countries. Nigeria, about 190 million people today, is projected to be larger than the United States by 2050, close to 400 million people. So the book is not just about how to participate in that growth opportunity by selling products there, but by also building products there and building the supply chain and the supply network and fully industrializing on the continent. There's 6 manufacturers. There's Mercedes, there's BMW, there's Toyota, Nissan, Ford, and I said BMW, right?
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. Right. So yeah, there's 6 companies now, and the
General Motors was there.
GM is left. Out. Yes. Ford is there. That's number 6 was Ford. Ford also builds products on the continent as well, in South Africa as well. So of the 54 countries, there are only about 1 million vehicles produced. So 1.2 billion people, 1 million vehicles produced. So between South Africa and Morocco, that's close to the 1 million vehicles that are produced on the continent. And then you have a few other, cats and dogs here and there, a few in Egypt, a few in Algeria, a few in Kenya, a few in Nigeria.
And I would add, too, that there's a real supply chain developing in Morocco, too, to supply that automotive production.
Yes, Morocco has objectives of getting into the 60% range. South Africa does as well. They have new policy programs to increase localization. And that's the real, that's the real secret sauce of being able to build in an emerging market profitably, is to have that localization of the supply chain. I think back to the time when I was at GM in the 90s, and there were a few people working on, the China project. And now, those who invested early in China, GM and Volkswagen, are not only leading in that market, they're the leaders of the largest auto market in the world.
What is necessary, to work on today's base and really take this supernova? I mean, you've got concerns around infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You might have some geopolitical concerns. You might have workforce education concerns. What are the impediments to that sort of growth? Well, in the book, I talk, one of the chapters of the book talks about the 10 steps to industrialize automobile production in an emerging market. Many of them are some of the points you mentioned. Public-private partnerships is probably one of the most important. It is going to take strong involvement of the private sector, but it's also going to take involvement of the public sector, meaning there has to be policy support for it from the head of state level.
Do you see that kind of talk happening in Africa? Do you see ministries of trade and governments talking about making this happen?
Yes, I think, in Motoring Africa, we focus on 6 specific countries.
Okay, we know 2 of those countries, right? South Africa and Morocco. Who are the other 4?
The others are Kenya, Ghana, Ethiopia, and Nigeria.
Beyond a growing consumer base and a growing workforce there, what are some of the advantages of Africa in particular? Are there natural resource deposits and things like that will be helpful to the industry? Or are there other advantages, location?
The natural resources, I think, can play a part in the value chain, the local value chain. So not just extracting the natural resources, but processing them into aluminum, into the other materials that are needed that go into those 30,000 parts inside the vehicle.
Edward, the auto industry looks like it's going to go through a transformative decade here.
Yes.
As we move to mobility services and autonomous cars, how might that affect your plans for Africa?
You're still looking at a low income, many low incomes on average countries. However, mobility services are going to make vehicles more accessible to more people despite your income level.
A high-tech startup getting into all this mobility services stuff.
Yes.
Africa might be an ideal place to launch.
It actually could. It actually could be a very strong place to launch.